Not too long ago, I made a video called taking a sexuality test, just because not only was it Valentine's Day, so it was kind of fitting for that, but I was just kind of also curious as to where I fell on that spectrum. And now following up that video, I decided, hey, what if we went ahead and took a gender identity test? Now, before we get into this, I figured it would be a good idea just to kind of get my stance on all of this, and you know, I don't mean to offend anybody by my explanation or my stance on this. By no means am I an expert, or do I claim to be an expert in this, but basically where I stand on this is like, I don't really see the difference in the genders, right? From a scientific standpoint, I do see the difference in that, hey, you know, males have a certain thing down there, and then females have a different thing down there. But beyond all that, I don't really see like the difference beyond that in terms of like inside. In other words, the only thing that I know that actually separates the genders is either certain body parts or just certain like parts of the body that, you know, whether it be like the eggs that females have, for example, that allow them to become pregnant, or like certain things that males have to create in order to, you know, the give those eggs what they need to create little ewes. I'm trying to keep things as PG as possible right now. And honestly, I don't understand how or why it would go beyond that, but again, I'm completely ignorant in this field. So hey, if there's more education that I need on that, feel free to educate me. Question 1 of 35. I explore my gender identity in ways that more traditionally minded people haven't considered. No, not at all. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I kind of view gender in the same way that I view race, and it's just like, hey, you're born with whatever, and then from there, like, you know, that's just kind of that. I mean, obviously, you know, there's like surgeries nowadays that let you change stuff like that, and for me, you know, it's one of those things. I said in the sexuality video, but I don't care what you do, you know, like, if you feel like you need that surgery, then go ahead and go for it. I mean, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect my life, so like, why should I care one way or another? I mean, I fully support people that want to do that. Like, if you're like, hey, I really need the surgery, I won't feel right until I go through with this transition, then, you know, like, all power to you. I fully support you 100%, but otherwise, you know, it doesn't affect me, so, like, you know, why should I care one way or another? Question 2 of 35. I've taken steps to bring my physical body more in line with my gender identity, or am contemplating doing so in the future. Not at all. I wake up, I make YouTube videos, I play video games, I go to sleep, repeat. Medical professionals have at some point told me, or my caregivers, that I should consider genital surgery so that I could live a, quote, normal life. Nope, not even once. I challenge the traditional notions of what it means to be masculine or feminine almost every day. No. My gender identity matches the sex I was assigned at birth. Wait, what's the difference between, so assigned a sex at birth and then gender identity? Aren't they the same thing, or are those things different? For this, I'm gonna say agree, but I guess like the difference would be like somebody could say like, hey, I identify as a girl, even though like biologically speaking they were born as a male. Am I correct in that? I use my style, behavior, and mannerisms to live as the opposite gender of the one I was assigned at birth, and doing so feels right for me. Heavily disagree. The body I was born with matched the notions of what one would expect of a traditional man or woman. Yes. I often feel it's hard to identify with any internal identity. No. I often feel like I have no gender at all. Once again, I really don't understand how or why gender is even relevant in the first place. Like, for me, like, when it comes to human beings, I feel like it just goes beyond gender, beyond sexuality, beyond all that. We are just beings. It's that. Like, again, sure, you got like the, you know, the physical parts and the body parts and certain, like, you know, whatever, like, parts inside you that kind of contribute to whether you're labeled as one thing or another, but I don't know, I have a real hard time understanding why the whole gender thing even matters in the first place. Like, we're just human beings. Let us just be, we just are. It often seems to me as if people are oddly insistent on gendering everything, whereas I don't see the world gendering. Well, that's actually kind of funny, because I literally just said that. But yeah, I agree. And again, it's not like something where it's like I have anything against people that are like that. It's just a thing of where I'm not educated in that field, and that is just my current point of view. I truly cherish the fact that I'm able to present myself as a traditional man or woman. Yes, honestly, I do. I know in some places in the world, you know, when it comes to like the freedom of how you're able to express yourself, it's, well, you don't have that freedom. I've not felt the need to give a lot of thought to my gender identity. Yes, my internal sense of gender changes just as my mood changes. Disagree. The gender identity that it feels normal for me to express changes vividly from one month to the next. Disagree. I have rarely, if ever, felt that people are incorrectly assuming my pronouns. Disagree. I've had to correct or explain my gender identity or expression to others. Disagree. Having a definitive gender identity doesn't make sense to me. Well, no, I disagree with that. Like, having a definitive gender identity is good. I mean, there's a reason that is on, like, every time that you sign up for, like, a website, or, you know, you put in a job application. Again, it's just one of those things that you're born with, like, hey, you know, what race are you? Like, whether or not you end up, like, switching your gender later on, whether you end up getting a surgery, I mean, that's just an objective fact of life. You are born with a gender. Even if you're intersex, there's some label, there's something that you can be quantified as, you know, every single person is born with a gender of some kind, even if it isn't just male or female, even if it is intersex or something else entirely. Like, that is just an objective fact of life. And again, it's completely up to each person as to whether they change that later on, but of course, everybody, biologically speaking, has a definitive gender identity. Wait, but then again, I'm looking at the wording of this and it says gender identity, but we just talked about earlier how gender identity and sex could potentially be two different things. So maybe I'm wrong about that. Even as a child, I felt my gender identity did not match the— okay, yeah, see, this is what we're talking about again, where it's like gender identity and sex are like two completely different things. So I'm not sure. Obviously for this one, disagree. Deep down, I often wish to myself that my body was not gendered. Disagree. I rarely express my gender identities in ways that highlight the gender stereotypes in our society. I mean, honestly, I could say agree, because even if I was a female, like, it would be like, I don't do things that are considered like overly masculine, but I also don't do things that are feminine. You know, I just am. Again, I'm kind of like a machine. You know, I wake up, I make YouTube videos, I play video games, I go to sleep, I repeat, and the same could be said whether I was male or female. It doesn't matter. I mean, hey, when I'm taking a Waz, I use the bathroom standing up, so I guess that's considered masculine. So we'll go, like, I guess semi-agree here. I use my gender expression to go beyond the limits of what traditional society considers acceptable. Disagree. Throughout my life, I've always known that there was one gender identity that was more right for me than the others. Yes, I mean, I guess. It's kind of hard for me to say yes when I never even thought about it in the first place, but considering the fact that I've, you know, never even questioned it in the first place, I guess that's, you know, enough for me to say, yeah, I strongly agree. At the end of the day, I just know deep down that I am more male than female, or more, again, I don't really see how, like, it really matters one way or the other. Perhaps there is more to it than just what body part you have. I don't really know. Again, I feel like once people start assigning genders, though, isn't that kind of like stereotyping in a way? And isn't that like the thing that these communities and such are trying to get away from? Like, I feel like in a way, when you start saying, oh, I am this or I am that, well, then it takes away the individuality of each person that does fall into that category, because then you're kind of stereotyping as to what makes a certain person. It's like me saying, oh, you know, well, now I'm Asian or now I'm black. At that point, you're just kind of like stereotyping those things and just saying that you fall into that category just because there's, like, you know, certain things there that you agree with or feel. I mean, again, I'm probably entirely wrong about this, but this is just like the outside perspective seeing in as to how I'm seeing it. And again, if I'm wrong, which I probably am, please educate me so I can know. You learn something new every day, and every day is a new opportunity to learn, and I am very open-minded. I am willing to learn. I express my gender identity in a way that challenges or expands people's conceptions of gender. Disagree. Many people have been confused or surprised by the sight of my unclothed body. Hey, well, you know, I mean, it's a lot smaller than I thought it would be. I'm kidding. I've actually never been fully unclothed in front of anybody. I mean, sure, when I was a baby getting my diaper changed, but in terms of being fully unclothed in front of anyone, like the bathroom mirror, that's about it. I have experienced discrimination or violence because of my gender identity. Heavily disagree. There are multiple ways in which I express my gender identity rather than just a traditional male or female. Disagree. My gender identity changes over time. Disagree. I express my gender in ways outside the norm of any traditional gender identity. Disagree. Medical professionals have tried to talk to me into removing certain ambiguous traits I have or have had because they wanted me to appear more like a traditional man or a woman. I guess I would apply to, like, intersex people, for example, like, you know, when they're born with, like, you know, both sexes, or if they're born with, like, one thing and not another. I don't really believe that one's gender identity can change the course of life. No, I disagree with that, because we've seen that more and more in society, where, like, you know, more people are identifying as one thing earlier in life, but then later on going, hey, I realized that I'm this. I mean, I feel like that's part of why those surgeries exist in the first place, because, you know, there's so many times where people are like, hey, I feel one thing, oh wait, now I feel another thing. I have reproductive or sexual anatomy that does not fit the typical definitions of male or female. Again, I feel like this would fit more in line with, like, intersex, or just, I guess, maybe people that are more confused or still just trying to figure out, like, what they are in terms of their identity. My gender identity doesn't fit the traditional categories of man or woman, male or female. Disagree. The sex I was assigned at birth truly matches or reflects how I perceive my gender identity. Agree. My gender identity differs from the sex I was assigned at birth. Disagree. So I was, you know, at first going into this, I wasn't sure if it was gonna, like, you know, identify me as, like, hey, are you male, are you female, are you this or that, but I guess this is just the more about the identity side of things, so I'm really interested to see what this is going to give. Oh, okay, wow, there is a lot here. So I am 80% cisgender, 20% gender fluid, I'm not non-binary, I'm not trans, I'm not I'm not intersex, but I'm 6% gender queer. Whoa, what does that even mean? Okay, so we have the few different definitions here. So we'll go with cisgender. We'll just go with because, you know, there's a lot to read here, so we'll just kind of go through the ones that I have. If you want to read this stuff, of course, just feel free to pause the video and go through it. But anyway, anyway, cisgender, which is the one that I'm 80% apparently. Cisgender, also known as cis or cissexual, describes individuals whose gender identities match the sex they were assigned at birth, but it says I'm only 80% now, which is really interesting. So I'm really curious to see what the other one is. For example, a person who was born female and identifies themselves as a woman or girl. Similarly, a person who was born male and identifies as a man or boy could also be described as cisgender. It is important to note that individuals who are cisgender may or may not be straight, since gender identity is different from romantic or sexual attractions. Then the next one is gender fluid, which says gender fluid individuals experience changes in the gender expression that feels natural to them and or their gender identity over time. For instance, a gender fluid person may identify as a man one week and a woman the next. That's really interesting because I don't think I answered any questions that would even hint towards that because I've never had that, but okay. Similarly, they could alternate between agender, bigender, non-binary, or any combination thereof. The concept of gender fluidity thus recognizes the existence of gender as a spectrum and not a simple binary. It emphasizes that gender identity may alter or fluctuate. It should be noted that gender fluidity is not synonymous with sexual fluidity, since gender fluidity pertains to flexibility with regard to the gender characteristics and social constructs that one is willing to adopt, while sexual fluidity refers to sex flexibility as to which genders one is attracted to. So I am also, which again, this is really interesting. It says here at the bottom again, oh wait, I thought it said 0% agender. So 20% agender and 6% gender queer. So now we gotta go down and read those. So gender queer. Individuals who deviate from binary gender norms sometimes refer to themselves as gender queer, as opposed to people who identify merely as non-binary. Gender fluid, agender, or similar many who identify as gender queer actively associate the term with challenging or subverting conventional gender distinctions. The urge to question gender expectations can range from good-natured play with gender to more deliberate political provocations in the service of highlighting gender stereotypes in our culture. Okay, I feel like that could be relevant. And then what was the other one? Agender, 20%. People who do not specifically identify as any gender sometimes refer to themselves as a gender with the prefix A, indicating no or no one. And this is really interesting. So if you guys did or didn't watch the sexuality test video, which again, if you want to go watch it, you can, but if not, I'll just save you like the 12, 14 minutes, whatever. I'm not like the other YouTubers. I don't need like every second of your watch time. There's other videos for you to watch on this platform. But basically, in that video, we had gotten asexuality on like all of them. It was like, slight percentages of hetero, but it was like 99% asexual. So I don't know if like agender and asexuality are like correlated or related in any way, or if the names are just really similar, but I find that interesting that there's at least some sort of correlation there. While some agender individuals characterize their identity as having no gender, others associate their gender identity with being gender neutral, gender free, ungendered, or gender blank. Other terms in this category include gender void, null gender, and genderless. An agender person typically feels as though they are neither a man nor a woman, nor a combination of male and female traits. However, as opposed to identities such as genderqueer or non-binary, the agender identity is often viewed as a statement of not having a gender identification at all. So for me personally, right, like in terms of my sex, I understand, or at least, I know that I'm a male, but in terms of my gender identity, I don't even know what that means. Like if somebody would tell me that my true gender identity is female, or that it's male, or that it's something else entirely, like I wouldn't know or even necessarily care as to what that means, because I simply don't know. I guess my main question here is, what is a male? What is a female? What is anything else that you could be identified as? Because again, all that I know is the sex side of it, where it's like, hey, if you're a male, you're born with, a certain genitalia down there. If you're a female, you're born with the other one. But otherwise, what separates them beyond that? Because again, once you start separating them and trying to give each one certain things, I feel like at that point you're kind of like putting a bit of segregation between the genders and saying, hey, this trait can only apply to this gender, this trait can only apply to this gender, and then you kind of fall into like the stereotype category. And again, it's important to hammer home the fact that I am super ignorant in this field and I have like absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about not even necessarily the knowledge that I have, just my perception of these things. So as we kind of wrap things up here, I just wanted to say, hopefully I did not offend anybody with this video. That was not my intention. It was just something I was interested in looking into, considering the results that we got on the sexual identity test, just some of the other like weird percentages and stuff in there. I was like, hey, maybe this could be interesting just to see where I fall in all these other spectrums, just because again, it's not necessarily a thing where like, oh, I'm questioning these things. It's just rather I'm curious as to where I actually fall in these spectrums. I feel like it's healthy to be curious about yourself and want to explore and, just see where you fall in these things according to these different tests. And again, obviously these tests aren't like 100% factual diagnosis. These are, again, just kind of like tests to kind of try to place you in a thing, but this isn't, of course, like 100% actually reflective or representative of how I may actually, just be. Anyway, just like last time, I will leave a link to this test down in the description if you guys want to go take this for yourself. Again, remember, this isn't a proper diagnosis by any means. This is rather just, like a quick test just to kind of give you an idea of where you may fall in some of these spectrums. But I found this to be quite interesting, and again, hopefully I did not offend anybody with this video. That was far from being my intention. It was just, just like, I would say like a fun thing, but rather just more like, my curiosity taking over, especially after that last video. Just really want to see where I fall in these spectrums, and who knows, maybe find something out about myself along the way, and also maybe learn something from you guys down in the comments, because again, there's a lot that I have to learn, clearly. But anyway, as always, massive shout out, thank you to all the Patrons and channel members, thank you to all in the low baller tier, and a big shout out, thank you to all of you the big baller tier, Mel asking me, Daddy Manny, the big shout out, thank you all in the G tier, Ron Evans, Sunland Cheese Girl, thank you guys so much, you guys are literal legends, I love you. Thank you guys for watching, have an amazing day, stay beautiful, I love you all, peace.